Greetings collectors, and welcome to today's retro game review. It's part 7 of this Gauntlet mini-series. Welcome to the Gauntlet. You join us in the second and last instalment of the Legends era. Today we're looking at Gauntlet Dark Legacy for the PlayStation 2. It's worth noting that if you haven't seen the previous episodes of this series, it might be worth going back and watching those first. 1998's Gauntlet Legends had proved one thing, and that's that there was still an ember of life in the Gauntlet franchise. Legends certainly wasn't a smash hit on the home consoles, but it did well enough to justify that at some point in time a sequel could be on the cards. This sequel never came to the 32-bit generation, but did arrive in the form of Gauntlet Dark Legacy in 2001 on the next-gen hardware. Legends had been a bit of a sluggish, uninspired and distinctly average game. The move from 2D to 3D was not an easy one for the series, but the developers believed in the cause. I'm pleased to say that a lot of the misgivings I had about Legends were addressed in Dark Legacy. The upgrades were not dramatic, but enough to catch my interest in the series once more. Enough time had passed to let the classic era go. It was gone, finished. It was time to see the Legacy era as its own set of games, and therefore not to be compared so meticulously to the originals. By this measure, I'm pleased to say that I actually really enjoyed Dark Legacy. The introduction neatly reminds us of the happenings in Gauntlet Legends, whilst also pushing us further into the storyline. All of the previous characters make it into the sequel, in addition to new classes in the way of the Dwarf, Knight, Jester and Sorceress. The aim of the game isn't that different from Legends. You'll be stepping through portals, bashing bad guys, collecting keys and generally running around in some decent paced action. This time around though, it feels different. It feels like a game that knows what it wants to be this time around, rather than a licensed name bolted onto a generic hack and slash title. The camera angle and depth issues have been resolved, the map layout's more enjoyable, and the combat system has evolved in a very pleasing way. You'll now really get to grips with standard shot, up-close attacks, magic, strong attacks, and special attacks. These upgrading attacks really are a game changer for the series. Gauntlet Legends fell foul of being too repetitive at times. Dark Legacy seems much fresher for longer by asking more of the player in terms of strategy. As you might expect, the sound and graphics have had somewhat of an overhaul, and both polished up rather well.
Use magic to kill enemies.
This time around, the classes also feel different to play with. The Archer Elf has some nimble skills, the Valkyrie is fiercer than ever, and the Jester is a really great alternative to play as. It's clear that there really is more in the way of game design here, lifting the game from a generic hack and slash to a more authentic Gauntlet experience. The physical presentation is also very decent. The artwork looks far more pleasing than the rather awkward polygons of the Legends title. It's more vivid and inviting, and a game that asks to be taken down every now and then for a quick burst of action. Whilst perhaps not to the tastes of the older Gauntlet player, there is certainly something to be said for Dark Legacy. It is fun and the gameplay is varied, which is perhaps all we could have asked for at this juncture in time. It's definitely worth a pickup if you see this one for a decent price. Now in 2001, the series had spanned a decade and a half. I would say that we can now look back favourably on Gauntlet Dark Legacy. It had kept the Gauntlet name alive through dark times. However, there was not an obvious route for the series to go now. The classic era had produced arguably the finest games in the series, whilst the Legends era via Dark Legacy had shown off a decent 3D variant of the game. It wouldn't be until 2005 that adventurers would once again pick up a new Gauntlet game. Join me next time as we begin the final leg of the Gauntlet story as we step into the modern era with Gauntlet The Seven Sorrows. The quest continues.